The sleek black Mercedes-Benz gleamed under the dealership's fluorescent lights as Rebecca Chen slid into the driver's seat, her fingers trembling against the leather steering wheel. She'd worked at Premium Auto Gallery for 3 years, selling luxury vehicles to tech moguls and old-money elites, but she'd never imagined she'd be driving one herself. The company car program was reserved for top performers, and after closing the Anderson deal, management had finally noticed her. What Rebecca didn't know was that her husband, the quiet software consultant who left for work each morning in khakis and button-downs, was actually Michael Chen, the billionaire CEO who owned every Premium Auto Gallery dealership from coast to coast. And as her lover, Daniel Westbrook, approached her in the parking lot that evening, his eyes fixed on the $150,000 vehicle with an expression that mixed suspicion with barely concealed rage, she had no idea that the next words out of his mouth would detonate her carefully constructed double life. "Nice car, Rebecca," Daniel said, his voice cold as winter steel. "Want to tell me how a dealership sales associate affords a vehicle that costs more than most people's houses? Or should I guess?" But what Daniel did next, what he revealed, what he demanded, what he threatened, would shock Rebecca in ways that made the luxury company car seem like the least important secret in her unraveling world. How could Rebecca have been so blind to her husband's true identity? What would her lover do with the suspicions now burning in his eyes? And when the truth about Michael Chen finally emerged, would anyone's life remain intact? Rebecca Chen had never been the type of woman who believed in fairy tales. At 32, she'd learned that happiness was something you constructed with careful planning, strategic choices, and an unwillingness to settle for the life others expected of you. Which was why, as she ran her hand along the pristine hood of the Mercedes-Benz S-Class that bore her name on the temporary registration, she felt a surge of pride that had nothing to do with luck and everything to do with her own relentless competence. The Premium Auto Gallery showroom in downtown Seattle sprawled across 2 stories of glass and polished marble, a temple dedicated to automotive excellence where vehicles worth more than most people's annual salaries sat like sculptures under precisely angled lights. Rebecca had worked here for 3 years, clawing her way up from the reception desk to become one of their top sales associates. She'd memorized every specification, every feature, every selling point of vehicles she couldn't afford to rent, let alone own. She'd smiled at men who looked through her, charmed women who saw her as competition, and closed deals that made her male colleagues seethe with jealousy. And now, finally, the company car. "It suits you," said Jennifer Park, the dealership's general manager, watching Rebecca from across the showroom floor. Jennifer was 50-something, with silver hair cut in a sharp bob, and the kind of confidence that came from 3 decades in a male-dominated industry. "You've earned it. The Anderson deal alone justified it, but your numbers this quarter have been exceptional." Rebecca felt warmth spread through her chest. The Anderson deal, $2.3 million in custom luxury vehicles for a tech CEO's entire executive team, had been her white whale. She'd pursued it for 8 months, through countless meetings, negotiations, and the kind of relationship building that required remembering birthdays, children's names, and dietary restrictions for business dinners. "Thank you," Rebecca said, meaning it. "I still can't quite believe it." What Jennifer didn't know, what nobody at Premium Auto Gallery knew, was that Rebecca had another reason to feel the weight of this moment. The company car wasn't just a symbol of professional success. It was proof of her independence, evidence that she didn't need anyone to provide for her, validation that she'd built something of her own. It was proof that she was more than just Michael Chen's wife. Michael. The thought of him sent a familiar mixture of affection and frustration through her mind. Her husband of 5 years was a good man, quiet, steady, almost maddeningly predictable. He worked in software consulting, leaving their modest Capitol Hill apartment each morning in business casual attire, returning each evening with the same gentle smile and willingness to listen to her day. He never complained about his own work, never seemed stressed about money, never demanded attention or admiration. He was, Rebecca often thought, the perfect man for someone who wanted a simple, uncomplicated life, which was precisely why she'd started seeing Daniel. The affair had begun 6 months ago at a wine bar in Belltown. Rebecca had gone alone, needing space after a particularly difficult day at the dealership, and Daniel Westbrook had appeared beside her at the bar like something out of a romance novel. Tall, confident, impeccably dressed in a charcoal suit that probably cost more than her monthly rent. He was a venture capitalist, he told her, with investments in everything from biotech startups to commercial real estate. He was also married, though he wore no ring and mentioned his wife only once in passing, with a kind of dismissive tone that suggested a relationship long past its expiration date. Rebecca knew it was wrong. She knew she should feel guilty, should end it, should either fix her marriage or leave it honestly. But Daniel represented everything her life with Michael wasn't. Excitement, passion, unpredictability, the intoxicating feeling of being wanted by someone who could have anyone. And now, as she prepared to drive home in her luxury company car, Rebecca felt the familiar tug of her divided life. She'd told Michael she was working late. She'd told Daniel she could meet him at 9. The double life was exhausting, but it was also, in some twisted way, exhilarating. Her phone buzzed. A text from Daniel. "Still on for tonight? There's something I need to discuss with you." Rebecca's stomach tightened. Daniel's messages were usually flirtatious, playful, charged with sexual tension. This one felt different, formal, almost ominous. She typed back, "Of course. Same place." "No. Meet me at your work. I'm in the area." 9 p.m. Won't take long." Rebecca frowned. Daniel had never come to the dealership before. They'd maintained careful boundaries, keeping their affair confined to neutral territories. Hotels, restaurants in neighborhoods where neither was likely to encounter anyone they knew. Once, memorably, his downtown condo when his wife was in San Francisco. But before she could respond, another text appeared. "Nice car, by the way. Saw you driving it last week near Pike Place. We need to talk about that." Ice flooded Rebecca's veins. Daniel had seen the car, but she'd only had it for 3 days, and she'd been careful, so careful about where she drove it, conscious that a vehicle this expensive would draw attention. Her fingers hovered over her phone's keyboard. She wanted to ask what he meant, wanted to demand an explanation for his tone, but something stopped her. Some instinct, born of years of reading people's intentions in negotiations, told her that this conversation needed to happen face to face. "I'll be here," she typed. 9 p.m. The hours between then and 9 o'clock crawled by with agonizing slowness. Rebecca tried to focus on paperwork, on follow-up emails with clients, on anything that would distract her from the growing dread in her stomach. Jennifer had left at 6, and by 8:30, the showroom was empty except for Rebecca and Marcus, the night security guard, who sat in his small office watching soccer on his phone. At 9 p.m., Daniel's Range Rover pulled into the visitor parking area. Rebecca watched through the showroom windows as he emerged from the vehicle, and even from this distance, she could tell something was wrong. Daniel's usual confident swagger was replaced by something harder, more aggressive. He wore jeans and a black sweater, casual by his standards, and his jaw was set in a way that made Rebecca's pulse quicken with anxiety. She met him at the main entrance, unlocking the door and ushering him inside quickly, conscious that Marcus might wander through at any moment. "Daniel," she said, trying to keep her voice light. "What's this about? You're being mysterious." He didn't smile, didn't lean in for the kiss that usually started their encounters. Instead, he walked slowly around the showroom, his eyes scanning the luxury vehicles displayed like art installations, before finally stopping in front of the Mercedes S-Class she'd parked prominently near the window. "This is your?" he asked, though his tone made it clear he already knew the answer. "It's a company car," Rebecca explained, hearing the defensive edge in her voice and hating it. "I earned it. Top performers get access to the fleet." "Top performers," Daniel repeated slowly. He turned to face her, and something in his expression made Rebecca take an involuntary step backward. "Rebecca, this vehicle is worth $150,000. I know because I looked up the exact model and trim package. I've been in this business long enough to know that dealerships don't just hand out six-figure vehicles to sales associates, no matter how good their numbers are. The company has a program. I've also been in this business long enough," Daniel continued, his voice growing colder, to know what it usually means when a beautiful woman is driving a car this expensive, especially a woman who claims to be in a mediocre marriage to a software consultant who, by your own description, makes maybe $120,000 a year. The implication hit Rebecca like a physical blow. You think I'm, what? That someone is paying me? That I'm some kind of... I think you haven't been honest with me, Daniel said flatly. I think there's more to your situation than you've let on. And I think, before this goes any further, I deserve to know who I'm really involved with. Rebecca's mind raced. She could explain the Anderson deal, show him her sales records, prove that she legitimately earned this car. But underneath Daniel's accusation, she heard something else. Jealousy, possessiveness, the kind of male ego that couldn't accept that a woman might achieve something significant without a man's assistance. And suddenly, standing in the showroom surrounded by vehicles that represented her competence, her skill, her worth, Rebecca felt something shift inside her. You deserve to know, she said quietly, and now there was steel in her voice. Daniel, you're married. We're both married. We've both been lying to our spouses for 6 months. And now you're questioning my integrity because I'm successful? That's not what I... But Rebecca was done. The car is exactly what I told you it is. I earned it by being exceptional at my job. If that threatens you, if you can't imagine a woman succeeding on her own merits, then maybe this, she gestured between them, was a mistake from the beginning. Daniel's face darkened. For a moment, Rebecca thought he might apologize, might back down, but instead, he pulled out his phone, tapped the screen several times, and turned it to face her. Then explain this, he said. The image on his phone was a newspaper article from the Seattle Business Journal, dated 3 weeks ago. The headline read, Premium Auto Gallery expands Pacific Northwest presence under Chen's leadership. And below it, a photograph that made Rebecca's entire world tilt sideways. The photo showed a man in an impeccably tailored suit standing in front of a premium auto gallery showroom. Not this one, but the flagship location in Bellevue. He was shaking hands with the mayor, surrounded by other executives and local business leaders. The man was smiling, a professional, corporate smile that Rebecca had never seen before. Because the man in the photograph was Michael, her quiet, unassuming, software consultant husband. Except the caption beneath the photo read, Michael Chen, CEO of Premium Auto Holdings, marks the opening of the company's 15th Pacific Northwest location. Rebecca's hands went numb. The phone in Daniel's hand might as well have been a grenade. So, Daniel said, and his voice was sharp enough to cut glass, your mediocre husband is actually Michael Chen, the billionaire who owns this entire dealership chain, the man whose company employs you. The man whose company just gave you a $150,000 car. He stepped closer, and Rebecca could smell his cologne. The scent that had once made her pulse race now made her stomach turn. Were you ever going to tell me? Daniel demanded. Or were you just enjoying your little game, pretending to be some struggling sales associate while your husband's fortune bankrolled your entire life? But Rebecca wasn't listening. Her mind was spinning backward through 5 years of marriage, cataloging every detail, every conversation, every mundane moment that she now had to reassess completely. Michael's calm acceptance of her job at Premium Auto Gallery, his lack of questions about her hours or her clients, the way he'd never once visited her at work, never asked to see the showroom, never seemed interested in the industry that supposedly had nothing to do with him. Their modest apartment in Capitol Hill, furnished with pieces from IKEA and Target, nothing that suggested the kind of wealth a billionaire CEO would command. His simple clothes, his Honda Civic, his packed lunches and home-cooked dinners. The software consulting job had been a lie. The entire foundation of their relationship had been built on a deception so massive that Rebecca couldn't yet comprehend its scope. But even through her shock, even through the earthquake cracking apart everything she thought she knew about her life, one thought rose to the surface with crystalline clarity. Michael had been lying to her for their entire marriage, and suddenly her affair with Daniel, the betrayal she'd been living with for 6 months, felt like a minor infraction compared to the architectural deception her husband had constructed. I didn't know, Rebecca whispered, and she realized her cheeks were wet. I swear to you, Daniel, I had no idea. Daniel's expression shifted, skepticism warring with something that might have been concern. How could you not know? How could you be married to someone and not know they're a billionaire? It was a good question. It was the question, and Rebecca didn't have an answer. What she did have was a sudden, desperate need to confront her husband. Rebecca drove home in the Mercedes, the luxury vehicle now feeling like a piece of evidence in a crime she didn't understand. Her hands shook on the steering wheel. Her mind kept circling back to the photograph, to Michael's face in that expensive suit, to the title that revealed a life she'd never suspected. CEO, billionaire, owner of the company that employed her. Their apartment was dark when she arrived, but Michael's Honda Civic was parked in its usual spot. Rebecca checked her phone. 10:47 p.m. Late, but not so late that Michael would be asleep. He usually waited up for her, reading on the couch, always asking about her day with genuine interest. Genuine interest in the company he secretly owned. Rebecca's hands trembled as she unlocked the apartment door. The living room was indeed lit by a single lamp, and Michael was indeed on the couch with a book, some thick hardcover about economic theory that she'd never bothered to examine closely. He looked up when she entered, and his smile was so familiar, so warm, so completely normal that Rebecca felt a surge of anger so intense it nearly knocked her sideways. "Hey," Michael said, marking his page. "How was your—" But he stopped, his smile fading as he registered her expression. "Rebecca, what's wrong?" She pulled out her phone, pulled up the photograph Daniel had shown her, and held it out wordlessly. Michael's face went through a series of transformations. Surprise, resignation, something that might have been relief, and finally a kind of weary sadness. "Ah," he said quietly. "So, you found out?" "Ah." Rebecca's voice came out louder than she intended. "That's all you have to say? Ah?" Michael stood slowly, setting his book aside with the kind of care that suggested he was buying himself time to think. "I can explain." "You've been lying to me for 5 years," Rebecca said, and she was shaking now, her entire body vibrating with shock and fury. "You're not a software consultant. You're the CEO of Premium Auto Holdings. You're a billionaire. You own the company I work for. The company where I've been—" She stopped, swallowing hard. "The company where I've been working my ass off to prove myself, to earn recognition, to build something of my own. And it was yours all along." "No," Michael said firmly, and he took a step toward her. "Your work was yours. Your achievements were yours. I never interfered. Never influenced your career. Never told me the truth." Rebecca's voice cracked. "How could you do this? How could you lie about something this fundamental?" Michael was quiet for a long moment, and when he spoke, his voice was softer than she'd ever heard it. "Because I wanted to know if you could love me. Just me. Not my money, not my success, not the empire I built. Just Michael, the man." The words hung in the air between them, and Rebecca felt something in her chest crack open. Because underneath her rage, underneath her sense of betrayal, she could hear the truth in what he was saying. She could hear the fear that had motivated his deception. But it didn't excuse it. "So you tested me," she said. "You created this entire fake life, this entire fake identity, to test whether I was worthy of knowing the real you?" "It wasn't like that." "Then what was it like, Michael?" Rebecca demanded. "Explain it to me. Make me understand how the man I married could look me in the eye every single day and maintain such a massive lie." Michael walked to the window, his back to her, and Rebecca saw his shoulders rise and fall with a deep breath. When he spoke, his voice was distant, as if he were recounting someone else's story. "My first marriage ended when I was 28, he said. "I just sold my first company for $800 million. I was on the cover of Forbes. I thought I had everything." He turned to face her, and his expression was haunted. "Christina, my ex-wife, left me 6 months later. She took half of everything, which was her legal right, and I didn't even fight it. Because I realized she'd never loved me. She'd loved the lifestyle, the status, the access to wealth. When I look back at our relationship, I couldn't find a single moment that felt real." Rebecca wanted to interrupt, wanted to argue that his past didn't justify his present deception, but something in Michael's face stopped her. "After that, I tried dating as myself. as Michael Chen, CEO, billionaire. And every woman I met saw the money first. They said the right things, claimed to care about the real me, but I could see it in their eyes. The calculations, the way they'd look at my watch or my car or my credit card and see opportunities instead of a person. He moved closer, and Rebecca found she couldn't step away. Then I met you, Michael said, at that coffee shop in Capitol Hill on a Saturday morning when I deliberately dressed down, deliberately left my expensive car at home, deliberately tried to blend in like a normal person. You were reading a book about sales psychology. I asked what you thought of it. You told me it was bullshit wrapped in pseudoscience, but that it had 2 good chapters about understanding what people actually want versus what they say they want. Despite everything, Rebecca remembered that conversation, remembered the quiet man with the gentle smile who'd bought her a refill, and talked with her for 2 hours about human behavior, motivation, and the art of connection. You didn't care who I was, Michael continued. You cared about what I thought, what I believed, whether I could keep up with your mind. And for the first time since my divorce, I felt like someone saw me, just me. So I lied about my job, I lied about my income, I created a modest life that would let me keep being just Michael in your eyes. For 5 years, Rebecca said, but her voice had lost some of its anger. You maintained this deception for 5 years of marriage. I know, Michael said, and now there was anguish in his voice. I know it was wrong. I knew it was wrong from the beginning. But every day that passed made it harder to tell you the truth. Every time I came close, I imagined how you'd look at me afterward. If you'd still see me the same way, or if I'd see the shift in your eyes, that recalculation of who I was based on what I own. He reached out slowly, giving her time to pull away, and took her hands in his. When you got the job at Premium Auto Gallery, I almost told you then, he said, but you were so excited, so proud to have gotten it on your own merits. And you had. Jennifer hired you without any input from me. I made sure my executive team knew never to mention my personal life, never to make the connection between their CEO and the new hire on the sales floor. I wanted you to build your career without my shadow over it. Rebecca's mind was reeling. She understood the psychology of what Michael was describing, understood the fear of being valued only for external attributes, understood the appeal of being loved for one's essential self. But understanding didn't equal acceptance. You should have told me, she said, after we got serious, after we got engaged, after we got married. At some point, you should have trusted me with the truth. You're right, Michael said simply. I should have. I was a coward. I was so afraid of losing you that I risked losing you in a worse way. They stood there in the lamplight of their modest apartment, the apartment that Rebecca now realized was a choice, not a necessity, a stage set designed to maintain Michael's fiction. And she felt the foundation of her marriage crumbling beneath her feet. But then another thought occurred to her, sharp as a knife. She'd been maintaining her own deception. The affair with Daniel suddenly loomed large in her mind. For 6 months, while her husband was lying about his identity, she'd been lying about her fidelity. They'd both constructed false versions of their lives. They'd both betrayed each other's trust. The difference was that Michael's lie had been born from fear of losing her, while Rebecca's had been born from, what? Boredom? A need for excitement? Proof that she was desirable to powerful men? The shame that crashed over her was almost physical in its intensity. Michael, she started, and then stopped. How could she confess her own betrayal in the same conversation where she was processing his? How could she claim moral high ground when she'd been sleeping with another man while her husband, misguided as he was, had been trying to protect their connection? But before she could figure out what to say next, her phone buzzed with a text message from Daniel. I did some research. Your husband isn't just a billionaire. Premium Auto Holdings is worth $4.7 billion, and you're about to be very wealthy in a divorce. We need to talk about our future. Rebecca stared at the message and suddenly everything clicked into horrible, perfect focus. Daniel hadn't been upset because he thought she was lying. He'd been upset because he'd discovered she had access to serious wealth. Wealth he wanted to be positioned to share in. His anger hadn't been about her integrity. It had been about his potential profit. The affair that had made her feel desired, valued, seen was just another transaction. Daniel had looked at her and seen the same thing Michael had feared everyone would see, an opportunity. "Rebecca," Michael's voice was gentle. "Who's texting you?" And in that moment, faced with the ruins of her marriage and the revelation of her lover's true motives, Rebecca made a choice. She told Michael everything. The confession took an hour. Rebecca told Michael about meeting Daniel at the wine bar, about the 6 months of lies in hotel rooms and stolen afternoons. She told him about the text message, about Daniel's calculation regarding divorce settlements and future wealth. She told him everything except the parts that would have been deliberately cruel, the comparisons she'd made between them, the moments she'd wished Michael were more like Daniel. Michael listened without interrupting, his face unreadable, and when she finished, they sat in silence for what felt like an eternity. "I'm sorry," Rebecca finally said, and tears were streaming down her face. "I'm so sorry, I have no excuse. You were lying about your identity, but I was lying about," her voice broke, "about everything that actually matters in a marriage." Michael was quiet for another long moment. Then he said something Rebecca didn't expect. "I'm sorry too." She looked up at him, confused. "I created this," Michael said, gesturing around the apartment, meaning more than just the physical space. "I created a situation where you felt you were married to someone boring, someone ordinary, someone who couldn't give you the excitement or status or passion you deserved. I was so focused on being loved for my authentic self that I never considered whether my authentic self was enough." "That's not," Rebecca started, but Michael held up a hand. "I've been reading your reactions for 5 years, Rebecca. I'm not blind. I saw the moments when you looked at our life and seemed disappointed, restless. I told myself it was just work stress or wedding planning stress or apartment hunting stress. But deep down, I knew. I knew you wanted more than I was giving you." "More money?" Rebecca asked. "No," Michael said. "More truth, more vulnerability, more risk. I played it safe with you. I gave you stability and consistency and a partner who'd never challenge you or surprise you or demand that you grow beyond your comfort zone. I gave you a boring life because I was terrified that an exciting one would expose me." Rebecca absorbed this, and she realized he was right. The affair with Daniel hadn't really been about Daniel at all. It had been about breaking out of the comfortable, predictable pattern her marriage had become, a pattern Michael had deliberately created. "So where does that leave us?" she asked. Michael stood and walked to a closet she'd always assumed held winter coats and storage boxes. He opened it, moved some items aside, and pulled out a folder she'd never seen before. "I had my lawyers draw these up 3 years ago," he said, handing her the folder. "After we'd been married for 2 years and I still hadn't told you the truth. I wanted you to have options if the deception ever came to light." Rebecca opened the folder and found herself looking at divorce papers, already filled out, requiring only signatures. But attached to them was something else, a financial settlement offer that made her head spin. $20 million outright, with no strings attached, plus the apartment, which she now realized Michael owned, and which was apparently worth $2.3 million, plus a continued position at Premium Auto Gallery if she wanted it, or a severance package that would make her independently wealthy. "I don't understand," Rebecca said. You're just giving me this?" "I'm giving you a choice," Michael corrected. "You can sign these papers, take the settlement, and walk away from this marriage with enough resources to build whatever life you want. No judgment, no bitterness, no attempts to make you stay out of guilt or obligation. Or," Rebecca whispered, "or we burn both sets of lies to the ground and start over," Michael said. "Real names, real identities, real vulnerabilities. I tell you everything about my business, my wealth, my past, my fears. You tell me everything about what you need, what you want, what would make you choose me, not because I'm safe or stable or convenient, but because I'm the person you actually want to spend your life with." He knelt in front of her chair, and Rebecca saw that his eyes were wet too. "I love you," Michael said. "The real you, the ambitious, brilliant, complicated, sometimes restless woman who could sell ice to polar bears and who sees through every manipulation tactic ever invented. I don't want you to stay because you've invested 5 years in this marriage. I want you to stay because we can build something real together, something that scares us both." Rebecca looked at the divorce papers, at the promise of freedom and wealth and a clean break. Then she looked at her husband, at the man she'd married while knowing only half his truth. The man who'd loved her while knowing only half of hers. The smart choice, the safe choice, would be to take the money and run. To end the marriage before it got more complicated, before more deceptions emerged, before the foundation of lies they'd built completely collapsed. But Rebecca had spent 3 years clawing her way to the top of the premium auto gallery sales team. She'd spent 6 months maintaining an affair that required elaborate scheduling and constant misdirection. She'd spent her entire adult life making smart, calculated choices designed to minimize risk and maximize reward. And where had it gotten her? Sitting in an apartment that was a lie, married to a man she didn't really know, having an affair with a man who saw her as the investment opportunity, driving a company car that represented success in a company her husband secretly owned. For the first time in her life, Rebecca decided to make a choice that wasn't smart or calculated or safe. She tore up the divorce papers. 6 months later, the penthouse overlooked Elliott Bay, floor-to-ceiling windows offering a view that made Rebecca's old Capitol Hill apartment look like a college dorm room. This was Michael's real home, the one he'd maintained separately throughout their marriage, the one he'd never brought her to because it would have exposed his deception. Now it was their home, their honest, complicated, still being figured out home. Rebecca had quit Premium Auto Gallery, not because Michael asked her to, but because Jennifer had offered her a position as VP of Sales Strategy for the entire Premium Auto Holdings network. The promotion had come with a salary that reflected her actual value, along with the knowledge that she'd earned it through 3 years of exceptional performance, not through nepotism. She'd also ended things with Daniel, but not before he'd threatened to expose her affair unless she paid him $250,000. Michael's lawyers had handled that situation with ruthless efficiency, producing evidence of Daniel's pattern of targeting wealthy women and making it clear that any attempt at extortion would result in criminal prosecution. The affair with Daniel had taught Rebecca something valuable. She didn't actually want a man who offered excitement without substance. She wanted a partner who challenged her, surprised her, pushed her to grow, but who also knew her completely, truth and all. Michael had proven himself capable of that. In the 6 months since Rebecca tore up the divorce papers, her husband had opened every door, answered every question, and shown her every corner of his life. She'd learned about his first marriage, his business empire, his philanthropic work, his failures and regrets. She'd met his executive team, attended charity galas, and learned to navigate the world of serious wealth. It was terrifying and exhilarating, and nothing like the life she'd planned. But it was real. "Penny for your thoughts?" Michael asked, coming up behind her at the window and wrapping his arms around her waist. "Just thinking about that Mercedes," Rebecca said, "the company car that started all of this." "Do you miss it?" Rebecca turned in his arms and smiled. "No, I prefer the Aston Martin you got me for our anniversary." Michael laughed, a full, genuine laugh that she'd heard more of in the past 6 months than in their previous 5 years together. "So materialistic," says the billionaire who owns 17 luxury car dealerships. 18, actually. "We just acquired the Portland market." "My mistake." Rebecca kissed him, and it still felt new, this version of their relationship where everything was exposed and honest, and sometimes difficult, but never ever boring. "By the way, I got a text from Daniel." Michael's arms tensed slightly. "What did he want?" "To tell me he's engaged. Apparently he's found a new target, some venture capital heiress whose trust fund makes your net worth look modest." "And how do you feel about that?" Rebecca considered the question honestly. 6 months ago, the news would have hurt, would have felt like rejection or proof that she'd been disposable. Now it just felt like confirmation that she'd dodged a bullet. "I feel grateful," she said finally. "If he hadn't shown me that photograph, if he hadn't been greedy enough to research your net worth, I might never have learned the truth. We might have kept living those lies forever. Or until something else exposed them," Michael agreed. "Lies have a way of coming out." "Speaking of which," Rebecca said, "I got a call from Jennifer today. Apparently there's been some gossip around the office about the boss's wife getting special treatment." Michael frowned. "You earned that promotion. I know, and so does Jennifer. But perception matters. So I've been thinking. Rebecca paused, gathering her courage for what she was about to propose. What if I started my own thing? A consulting firm that helps luxury brands improve their sales strategies. I could use my premium auto experience as a foundation, but build something that's entirely mine. No connection to your company, no possibility of people questioning whether I earn my success. She watched Michael's face carefully, looking for signs of hurt or rejection, but instead saw something that looked like pride. I think that's brilliant, he said, and I think you'll be incredibly successful, but he held up a finger. I want to invest, not as your husband, but as someone who recognizes a sound business opportunity. You'd maintain full control, full ownership, but you'd have capital to scale quickly. Rebecca started to protest, then stopped. The old Rebecca would have refused out of pride, would have needed to prove she could do it entirely alone. But the new Rebecca, the one who'd learned that accepting help wasn't the same as being dependent, could see the wisdom in his offer. Minority investor only, she said, and market rate terms. I don't want special treatment just because I sleep with you. Deal, Michael said, then softer. I'm proud of you. For what? Tearing up divorce papers? For taking a risk on us? For choosing truth over comfort? For being brave enough to rebuild instead of starting over? Rebecca kissed him again, and through the windows the Seattle skyline glittered with possibility. She thought about the woman she'd been 6 months ago, successful but restless, ambitious but unfulfilled, married but alone, driving a luxury company car that represented everything except what she actually needed. That woman had been unaware her husband was a billionaire CEO who owned the car dealership company she worked for. That woman had been having an affair with a man who saw her as a transaction. That woman had been living half-truths and calling it happiness. But that woman had also been brave enough, when confronted with the ruins of her comfortable lies, to choose the uncertain path towards something real. And now, standing in a penthouse that represented one version of her future, preparing to build a company that represented another, married to a man who finally knew all of her and loved all of her anyway. Rebecca Chen felt something she hadn't felt in years. Complete. Not because her life was perfect, or her marriage was easy, or her choices had all been right, but because, for the first time, she was living entirely in the truth. Messy and complicated and sometimes painful as that truth was. The luxury company car had been beautiful, but this honest, hard-won, rebuilt from rubble life, was real. And real, Rebecca had finally learned, was infinitely more valuable than any Mercedes-Benz. Her phone buzzed one last time. A text from Jennifer. Board approved your business loan for the consulting firm. Terms attached. Welcome to entrepreneurship, boss. Rebecca smiled, showed the message to Michael, and together they looked out at the city where both of their empires, his established, hers just beginning, would grow. The affair was over. The lies were burned away. The marriage was being rebuilt, brick by honest brick. And the woman who'd once driven a company car she didn't fully understand now drove her own destiny with full knowledge of exactly what she'd earned and exactly what she'd chosen. It wasn't the ending she'd expected when Daniel looked at her luxury vehicle with suspicion in his eyes, but it was, Rebecca thought, exactly the ending she deserved.